How's everyone doing? Everyone doing okay? Yeah? What was the, I didn't even get to eat. What was the food like? Was it good? I'm really hoping there's some leftovers when I go back there. So thank you guys for being here. Let me see. Oh, this works well. So I'm really happy to be here, and I want to drop some more knowledge on you, but I also can't wait till I'm done, because I want to see Elliot speak and I want to see Damon. So like, it's kind of a juxtaposition. But I want to talk to you guys today about what I call the 3 new truths. And I want to talk to you also about kind of my journey and give you guys some perspective on what it's taken to get from where I was to where I wanted to be. And we talked about this a little bit at the branding panel about how things don't happen overnight, but in reality, with the speed of the way business is moving nowadays, it basically is overnight. And so the first thing I'm going to tell you about is, well, let's talk about millennials. Let's talk about our generation. Why are we so fucked up? Look at this. Look at these selfies. Is it any wonder that other generations think we're crazy? And I want you guys to think in your head, and I want you guys to pose a question to yourselves. Do you think that the millennial generation is entitled? A lot of people, magazines and different news outlets say that this generation is selfish, that we're narcissistic, that we only care about ourselves, that, why is that woman dead? Like, what's going on with that dude? But a lot of people say that we're the entitlement generation, and I want you guys to really leave that question in the back of your mind so that we can answer it later, because I have a few thoughts. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the moment where I felt like I wanted to die. Back in 2009, just graduated school, graduated from USF. Anybody USF here? Anybody? Whoop, whoop. One person? And we're in Orlando. Okay, thank you. Oh. We can't talk about that. We can't talk. So back in 2009, graduated school, and as we all know, when you graduate, you're kind of hit with this crossroads. And everyone goes through this. This is the typical coming-of-age struggle, typical coming-of-age story. Everyone's familiar with this. I was met with 2 paths, and so I had a great time in school. I'd traveled for several years. I'd really gotten to meet some really cool people, and then I was kind of slapped with the real world thing. So the first thing that I was left with was option number 1, more school. How many people finished school and then immediately went back and did more school? Anybody? Yeah? So what does that mean? That means associates, you get your bachelor's. Bachelor's, you get your master's. You know, PhD, JD, BD, MD, DD, DD, all Ds, right? They're all really expensive. Right? And so there are 2 reasons why you go back to school, right? One reason would be because you've really found something that you love enough to devote another 3 to, I don't know, what, 10 years, right? 10 years. You really love something. And 2, you found something that you're willing to spend another $100,000 to learn. I couldn't find anything like that. There are still a couple things out there that might be worth going back to school. So, and really, it's just that the gatekeepers are still in place. So doctor, lawyer, engineer, those things you kind of just have to go back to school. You have to keep continuing that path because there are those walls in place that you can't surpass. But I didn't want to do any of that, so for me, it just wasn't worth it, much to the dismay of like 90% of my family. But that's just what it is, right? So what's option number 2? We all know this one, if it works, right? Oh, wrong button. Climb the ladder, right? How many of us, there are some weird, if you just type in anything on the internet, you find weird shit. How many of us graduated and immediately went and like found it, like you get your resume and then you find something that's like sort of in your area and then you do that thing for an indefinite amount of time trying to work your way up? Anybody? How many? Most of us, right? Most of us do that, right? Or you do like the spray and pray thing where you send out 1,000 resumes and you hope one sticks, and it's not really in your field, but it's kind of something that makes money for the time. And to be honest with you, this was actually in the beginning when I was just getting out of school, and I had some friends who had graduated a few years before me. I was actually kind of, in a way, jealous of these people because you got to think, 20, 21. To me, when my friends were making $60,000 or $70,000 out of college, I'm like, damn, that's a lot of money. Like maybe that's a good path. And I think that's what sucks most of us in, right? Because we want that immediate, we want the immediate gratification. And it feels good to be making money because basically every college student is poor. And that's kind of like the allure. That's the allure of that. But for me, I knew that working my way up the ladder was going to be a special type of hell. special type of hell. And so I couldn't do that. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. But because I rejected those two options, no more school, no climbing your way up the ladder, I was kind of left with not that many options. And so I had to work essentially every job. And when I say every job, I mean everything. I did what? I did door-to-door sales. I worked at a restaurant. I worked at a museum. I worked at coffee shops. Why did I say coffee? That's weird. I had like an accent there for a minute. I worked everywhere. I worked at UPS with the brown short shorts. This is what I imagined looking like. That's like 95% close. My abs are a little better. But yeah, and by the way, I'm a fantastic delivery driver. But I don't lift the heavy things. I just do the early morning envelopes, right? The really important legal documents. Worked at UPS, and nothing really stuck. My last job was at LongHorn Steakhouse, which, by the way, I just Googled this like right before I came here. There's one 12 minutes away if you guys want to like round up in a van afterwards and go. I learned a lot there about steak, so I can tell what type of person you are by how you order your steak. If you get your steak cooked, well done, just please get up and leave. I never understood why would you want to get like, I'm just going to get angry. I don't talk about it. But LongHorn was my last real job, right? And you know, the interesting thing about serving, which I'm not sure if some of you guys know this, is that you don't actually get a wage. Did you know that tipped employees, they only get like $2.13 an hour in Florida and in Atlanta, where I was at the time? $2.13 an hour. And what happens with that is, essentially, you have all this other work to do as a server. And so it's called side work, all these little, basically, this bitch work, like, let's be honest, right? So it's like, no, literally, it's like mopping the floors, it's like rearranging the sugar packets, it's doing all the shit that it takes to become a well-organized restaurant. Anybody former servers in here? Anybody? Yeah? Okay, so you guys are all good tippers, because you know how it is, right? Karma. Right, karma, exactly. And what happens with this $2.13 wage is that after taxes, all that's gone, right? And so all you end up getting is what you're tipped. So really, servers are getting paid only when they're serving, right? And so for me, that was really angering because I had a lot of work to do. And I don't know if you guys can see that. That's in the corner, that's a little ramekin there. My job that they made me do consistently day after day was scooping in butter balls. Like, no, literally, I would do this. I would probably spend like 12 hours a week scooping butter balls. And okay, so picture this, okay? We had this long galley kitchen, right? It's one of those big steel tables where they prepare food. And they would lay out, I would get in, they would lay out 10 trays. And I knew this was my station. I'm like, Daniel, get back in there and do the butter, right? So each tray held 50 of those little black ramekins, right? And so there's about 10, so there's about 500 ramekins of butter, right? And I had to scoop those things, not getting paid for those. So one day I was scooping the butter, and I specifically remember I was on 498 because there's 10 trays, and do the math, 50, no. I know how many fucking butters I scooped, all right? But the thing about it was the butter was still kind of like hard because it had been in the fridge for a long time, so it wasn't really a perfect ball. It was like this chunky little block thing that I was scooping out. And so my manager comes up behind me, and he's looking very, very condescending, because like he understands how butterballs should look. And he comes up behind me and he goes, "Those balls look like shit." So obviously, as any self-respecting man would do, I go, "Excuse me?" He says, "Those butterballs, do them all over again." And without even asking me, what he does is he takes the trays off of the counter, and he proceeds to fling every little butter back into the vat that we had and asked me to scoop them all over again. Now at that point, rage and anger. And to be honest with you though, this is all self-contained because I didn't have the balls to actually go berserk, but in my head, I was raging. And it was at this moment, and I know this sounds funny because wah, get over it. You're scooping butter at a restaurant, get over it. But I had kind of an existential crisis. Will this play? Oh my God, it plays, that's so cool. I had like a come to Jesus moment, if you want to call it. I'm like, wait a minute, I'm in the back. Not only am I spending, 10 plus hours a week scooping butter, but my butter balls aren't even good enough. There has to be something else I can do. There has to be a better way. And at this point, I knew I had to make a change. And I think we all have had a moment like that in our lives. Has anyone had a moment where like there was a permanent shift and you knew something had to change? You didn't know what it was, but you knew it had to change. You guys, show of hands? Yeah, all of us, all of us. If you haven't had that moment yet, it's coming, trust me. It might not be with butterballs, but it will come. So for me, this was the moment. And I knew something had to change. And so I made a commitment that I was going to figure out this whole money thing in my head. I'm going to figure out how I can do something that's worth my time, get paid what I'm worth, and more importantly, figure out where I want my direction in life to be. And at that point, I didn't know what that would be, but the only thing I did know was that I deserved better. And this is what I want to bring your attention back to with our original question, which is, do you feel like our generation is entitled? I felt like I was entitled to better, but does that make me a bad person? Does it make me a bad person that I felt like I deserved more? You know, what does it mean to be entitled? Time magazine said this in 2013. They said that we're the me generation. Let me see if I can read this. Millennials are lazy, entitled narcissists who still live with their parents. Now, the subtitle to this, which you can't see, is, but they also could be a very good generation. But I think this does more damage than their subtitle helps us, right? A lot of people think like this about our generation. And I want to challenge that. I want to challenge the idea that we're entitled. I want to challenge the idea that we think too highly of ourselves. I think we can't think highly enough of ourselves. And that doesn't just apply to millennials. It applies to all of us. It applies to every single generation, right? This is funny, right? The thing is, although our generation does feel like we deserve more, let's look back and let's think about why we feel like this. And let's think about the generations that have led up to this point that make us feel like this. And it's so funny. You know, I have an aunt who just died a few months ago, and up until she died, on the very last day, she was still getting pension checks from GM when she worked there. She was still getting Social Security. That actually doesn't exist for us anymore. It's a new world. There's a different way to operate in this world. And this is so funny. There's a group of memes called, I think what's like Old School Steve, or like, Old Economy Steven, right? And all these, fails out of high school, gets job, buys house, retires happy. Like, does anyone have people in their family who, like, they don't really, and this isn't a knock on anybody's family, but it's like they have completely regular jobs, but because of the time period they were born in, they were able to support a family of 5 working at a factory. You can't do that shit anymore. You might not even be able to get the factory job because the line is too long, right? We have to think of new ways to operate in this world where things are always changing. And we've been talking about that throughout this entire conference. Even at the branding panel today, we talked about the idea that by the time you implement this stuff, if you wait, it's already going to have changed. So let's talk about 3 new truths that our generation needs to embrace. And when I say our generation, I don't just mean generation, what are we, Y, I guess, Y, millennials. I don't just mean people who are between 19 and 39. I mean anyone who's living right now. If you're living, you're part of this generation, right? So let's talk about 3 new truths. Here's the first truth. College is dead. Sorry to say, but college is dead. There are very few things that you can learn in college that you can't learn outside of college nowadays. And again, we talked a little bit about how there are still some gatekeepers for certain professions, doctors, lawyers. I don't want a doctor who learned on YouTube how to operate on me, you know? I'd rather have some sort of board-certified physician. That's just me, personally. But other than that, there's nothing you can't learn by yourself these days. And I also want to challenge the idea that college is even necessary to live a happy life or to contribute something meaningful to society. Because that used to be the old maxim, right? Like if you want to make something of yourself, if you want to be able to be a productive member of society, you have to go to school. What I would say is this. If you want to go to college, fine, that's your choice. But I'd say more important than that, start a meaningful project instead. If you have 4 years of your life that you're going to devote to college, and you realize that maybe nothing in school you really want to study, maybe you can find something that's worth your time. Maybe you can find something that you can devote that time to outside of just trying to go to school and staying in class. So what could those meaningful projects be? Well, if you're not going to go to school, what are you going to do? Why don't you devote those next 2 to 4 years to learning something really deeply, like learning a martial art, traveling the world, Learning a language, and I don't just mean like learning a language like we did in Spanish when we would like watch those stupid videos and fill in worksheets. I mean like really learn a language and then go to the country where that language is spoken. Master a game, become really good at chess. If you're really interested in a subject, you don't need to go to college on it. You can read 20 books and know just as much as you'd know going to school for 4 years, and you pay $100,000 less, right? But figure out what it is that's meaningful to you, and then pursue that aggressively. You don't need to be in the confines of a university to figure that out. Now, I'll back this up by saying, look, most of us have already graduated school, or we've already made our choices in terms of what our scholastic career is going to be. But that doesn't mean that you can't start a meaningful project now. There are so many things that we want to do with our time. We say, I wish I would have learned this, or wouldn't it be great if I was good at this, or I can't wait till I have time till the kids are out of the house so I can learn another language. Why are you waiting again? Why are those things that are holding you back really stopping you? They're not, right? So I think the new mindset to get into is, what can I do that will enhance my life and contribute something meaningful to the world, and how can I start doing that thing now? If that thing is college for you, fine. But for me, I realize that there are so many things we could be doing with our time outside of spending it inside of a classroom where we're only taking in part of that knowledge and we're paying out the ass for it. That's the first truth. Second truth, you no longer have to pay your dues. People are going to get pissed because everyone's grandfather in here walked uphill to school in the snow both ways, right? Everyone talks about this. You got to pay your dues. You got to put in the time. But just like we were talking earlier at the branding panel, look, you can pay your dues and it will take some time, but you can get traction a lot faster now. And the way I like to think about this is, you don't need to go through point B to get from A to C anymore. One way that I've done this in my own life and in my own business is by what I call the marsupial method. I think that's the next slide, right? So why marsupial method? Well, what is a marsupial? It's a cute little thing. It has a little pocket, keeps the baby in there, keeps it warm. When I started my first freelance business, when I decided, okay, I'm leaving the restaurant, the first thing I did was I started an SAT, ACT test prep company. So this was a decision I made because in college, I worked for Kaplan. Anyone do Kaplan test prep when you guys were studying? Yeah, special type of hell also. But I'm pretty good at standardized tests, and so I was able to teach that. And one day I went to a student's house when I was still working for Kaplan, and I was making about $18 an hour working for Kaplan, and I thought that was pretty good. But I realized, after looking at a brochure, that the family was paying $100 an hour for me to be there. And I'm like, wait a minute, hold up, wait. I'm driving all the way over here. I am counseling this student. I am basically being a shrink to these like neurotic Ivy League parents. I have to do all this work, and I'm only getting $18. You guys are getting 82 out of the 100. Doesn't make sense. So I realized the first thing I could do was, wow, take a skill I already have and figure out how to do it for myself rather than doing it through a middleman. And what I found was that I didn't have to start from scratch and try to, I don't know, put a Craigslist ad out. How else would you get customers to come to your tutoring company? What I figured out was I can find people who already have my target audience, partner up with them, and immediately get customers, like overnight. The first thing I did was I looked for people, and this was when I was in Atlanta at the time. I looked for private admissions coaches, and what these people do is they prepare these Ivy League quality kids to get into these schools like from day one. Like they're working with these kids in 6th grade. And what they do is they tell them how to write their essays, how to prep for tests, how to package themselves. But they don't actually prep them for the test. They usually outsource that. So I went to these private admissions coaches because I knew they had all these clients, and I said, look, I used to teach for Kaplan. I can come in-house for you and basically like white label myself essentially. I can come in-house for you and I can be your in-house test prep coach. In return, you get to basically expand your business by adding a new product and a new service. Your clients love you. They stay inside your company. You don't have to send them out. And I'll also give you some of that money back, right? Because before, all they were doing was basically saying, all right, go to Kaplan, go to Princeton Review and come back and we'll work on it. But now you get to keep them in-house, and I'll pay you in return. I'll split some of the money with you. So instantly, overnight, I went from having no clients to a shit ton of clients, right? Because everyone needed this service. And so that's what I mean by skipping steps, guys. You don't have to start from ground zero. You just have to figure out where the workaround is. Creativity is the cure-all in this case, right? And so that's what I mean by developing these new truths, like trying to figure out where that workaround is, right? New truth number 3. Making great money shouldn't be a lifelong struggle. And I think this is something that a lot of us struggle with. It's a money mindset. It's a psychology mindset. But the reality is, if you want to make money and you want to make more money, you shouldn't have to struggle your whole life. You shouldn't have to agonize over making money. You should just start thinking about what problem you can solve and figure out how to immediately solve that need for customers, right? One example I like to use from this is the bike riding example. So here's a quick analogy. When you're a kid and you're first learning how to ride a bike, do you care if the person teaching you how to ride the bike is a Tour de France champion? Do you care if they're an expert cyclist? No. No, you just want to get that information because you want to get on your bike. A lot of us agonize in the beginning that we're not good enough, that we don't know enough, that we're not smart enough, that we aren't an expert enough to teach someone something or provide a service. Like what if Elliot, in the beginning was like, look, who am I to teach someone how to do a deadlift? I don't know, who are you, right? Like, you can do that. And the idea about consulting or the idea about helping people with a service or even a product is that if you can help someone get better results with you than they can get without you, that's enough, right? That's why it's okay to have your kind of goofy uncle teach you how to ride a bike. Even though he's not that good at it himself, he's better than you, and he can teach you, right? So that's the way we need to start thinking about making more money. It's not about being an expert all the time. You'll develop your expertise over time as you get better and better. It's about finding a problem that people have and solving that problem, right? So to wrap it up, change your perspective, change your life. College is dead. If you don't want to go, that's totally fine. And if you've already gone, still think about your meaningful project. Number 2, you can skip steps. You don't need to go through B to get from A to C. Figure out where that creative little hitch is and capitalize on that, just like the marsupial method. Number 3, making money isn't a struggle if you know how to solve a problem, right? So figure out where that pain point is, figure out how to solve a problem genuinely for someone, and stop obsessing about not being good enough because you are. Help people, and it's a lot easier. That's it. That's all I end. I just say, that's it. Thank you guys, appreciate you.